Western Africa, Northern Africa, we are still very dependent on fossil fuels, right? And where is the source of fossil fuels? The source of fossil fuels is the oil and gas fields, gas, petroleum, crude oil, right? Diesel, those fuels. And Nigeria now we're in a decade of gas because we're looking for cleaner ways to transition while still maintaining the fact that we have to explore our natural resources because we have it in abundance. Usually people will say it's renewables versus hydrocarbons, but I don't like to say that. I like to say it's renewables versus reality. What is our reality? Yes, we need to transition, but what is Africa's reality? So let's break that down.
Yeah, today's episode aims to unpack Africa's path towards energy transition, highlighting legal, regulatory, and investment considerations that shape the continent's energy future. And today, our guest, Sandra Osinachi Nwandem, brings a wealth of experience in oil and gas law, energy transactions, and policy advocacy to explore these complex issues. Sandra Osinachi is a senior associate at Tokbe Adebayo LPA. She is also a chief columnist at SON Energy Digest. Sandra's experience as a legal expert and columnist equips her to provide both strategic and technical perspective on how African countries can navigate energy transition without compromising energy security. I told you she's beautiful. I'm very intelligent.
You will be blushing on your behalf.
Hello, Sandra. Welcome
Thank you
to the
so
show.
much. Thank you so much.
Isn't she
it's
beautiful?
great
No,
to
she
have
is. Okay, I admit to you. I admit to you.
Yeah, I was
Thank
getting to this. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. It was easy because of Emmanuel. Emmanuel made it easy for me.
I'm a nice person. I like to do
We
that.
agree. Don't blow your own trumpet.
Thank you.
It's great to be here.
Yeah. Welcome to the show. Okay, so first of all, when we talk about Africa's future energy, what does that mean to the average Nigerian? Because most time when we talk about energy, people think it is that energy we are using to do work. Yes, so we are talking about the security of African energy and the future of it. Well, how do you explain that to an average African that is watching right now?
Okay. Africa's energy is always expedient. Like you rightly said, it's been a problem that has been there since you were little, when you were born, even before you were born. But it's always expedient and a lot still has to be done. So energy has to do with power. Energy is electricity. Energy is transportation. Energy is industrialization. Energy is what you and I use for our livelihoods. Energy is business. Energy is investment. Energy is like the single thread that keeps an economy running. It's like the oxygen. I always describe it as the oxygen of industrialization, the oxygen of livelihood. Without lights, we can't achieve a lot of things. So that is, energy is just light. It's globalization, it's industrialization, it's illumination.
So, I mean, everybody's talking about renewable energy, but Africa as a continent depends so much on fossil fuels.
Yes.
How does that impact or impede our transitioning? Because, I mean, we want to transition to something else now. But since we're already where we are, does that hamper our changes?
Well, if done responsibly, I wouldn't say it hampers energy transition, and I'm going to lay it bare. So Africa's energy transition or Africa's security story, it's one of, I'll say, opportunity because the demands are there. We have real climate goals to meet. The demands are there, which is usually filled by fossil fuels, but we still have real climate goals to meet. So it's usually people will say it's renewables versus hydrocarbons, but I don't like to say that. I like to say it's renewables versus reality. What is our reality? Yes, we need to transition, but what is Africa's reality? So let's break that down. So for Africa, the energy transition picture isn't a wholesome picture. It's kind of a mosaic because we have different parts of Africa relying on different sources of energy. Right? So we have the Northern and Western Africa, for example, Nigeria, Ghana, Libya, Ethiopia, Algeria. These countries rely heavily on fossil fuel. They rely on diesel to power the industries, while we have other parts of Africa, like Central Africa, like South Africa, Southern Africa. Like South Africa is still very much dependent on coal. They have 70% of their energy comes from coal. They have a large coal fleet. And they say coal is actually a dirty source.
Yes, it is.
Then you have Central Africa, like countries like Senegal, countries like Kenya, and some other Ethiopia, Eastern and Central Africa. They are actually still dependent on fossil fuel, but we can see that they are moving strategically and they are making progress with their transition journey. Right? For example, Kenya now is getting up to 45% base load of its energy from geothermal energy.
Wow.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
Rwanda is getting up to 30% of its baseload energy from solar, from distributed solar and wind energy.
So is it not possible for African countries to balance energy security and renewable energies? Is it not possible for them to be able to balance this together? One does not just have to depend on the transition alone. Okay, a particular country is doing this, another country is using the fossil fuel. Is it possible to balance both? Okay, let's make use of both at the same time.
Of course. Like I said when I was speaking at first, it doesn't have to be renewables versus hydrocarbons. They can work together. We can have two truths coexist at the same time.
Yes.
Because for, like I said, Western Africa, Northern Africa, we are still very dependent on fossil fuels, right? And where is the source of fossil fuels? The source of fossil fuels is the oil and gas fields, gas, petroleum, crude oil, right? Diesel, those fuels.
Yes.
And even if Africa now is kind of, Africa now is, or Nigeria now is, we're in a decade of gas because we're looking for cleaner ways to transition while still maintaining the fact that we have to explore our natural resources because we have it in abundance.
Yes.
So the idea, I was at the African Energy Week, and the idea,
I'm going to ask you that.
And the idea behind the African Energy Week, which I love so much, thanks to NJ Ayuk and the team at the African Energy Week, what they're doing there, it's so beautiful. Is Africa doesn't have to be forced to transition on the terms of the Western world. We have our own transition journey, and we have to take it at our own pace. So transitioning doesn't have to be one over the other; it has to be layered, right? How do we do this? We do this through policy. We do this through responsible asset management, right? Policy drives everything. Policy and implementation. I wouldn't just say policy because our laws, we have the laws.
Yes,
they have the laws. Nigeria, for example, we have good laws. We have the Electricity Act. We have the Petroleum Industry Act.
Yes.
We have a lot of presidential orders which are being codified now. And they are very good on paper. But how is the implementation? That is where the gap usually is. So definitely we can transition at the same time, but we have to manage our assets responsibly. If you want me to go deeper into that, I can talk about it.
Please go ahead.
How to manage our assets responsibly.
It doesn't, before you go, is that the energy security? Because does that mean you put policemen in front of where transformers are? No. That's
energy security. That's actually very funny. So energy security has to do majorly with, I would say, 4 elements. Energy security is reliability, affordability, accessibility, and then the last one, availability. Those are the 4 elements of energy security. So if it's accessible and it's not affordable, we will not say we are secured. We don't have it. It's accessible, it's there, but it's very expensive for the common man or for the last mile user. So those are the 4 elements of energy security. It's not physical.
And do you think these elements are really the citizens, the people? Do they have knowledge of these 4 elements you mentioned?
I would say it still has to do with the elite class. So when we talk about transition, when we talk about climate goals, when we talk about emissions, when we talk about global shift, the common man feels, oh, what does that have to do with me?
Exactly.
But it's the world. You're in the world. You're in the globe. It has everything to do with you.
If we don't have to fix that problem, everybody, all hands literally has to be on deck. So I think the first thing is how do we even educate them to even understand? You just mentioned before now, I'm sure 90%, let me not say everybody, 90% of the African population don't even know this.
Yes.
Because for it to be secure, you just mentioned there are 4 pillars that need to stand.
Yes.
So even if there's one leg that is not there, it's not complete.
It's not balanced.
Yes, it's not
so how do we even educate people to get to that place where they even understand affordability?
Exactly.
And then, okay, we want to
transition. No, they will understand affordability because everybody knows it's not cheap. But availability, reliability, they may really not understand those.
So how do we make them understand?
Conversations like this?
Conversations like this, conferences, right? But it's still, there's still a problem. It's still the
least that we go. So, I again, look, I understand.
But they're taking it now to the rural communities, like the rural electrification program, which is backed up by policies, backed up under the some of those policies we have, electricity policies, where the women in the village, they are enlightened to go for clean cooking, to use gas. But how does gas even get to the last mile user? For example, a woman in Zamfara, a community in Zamfara, how does she get gas? So we also need infrastructure. The AKK, these infrastructures, they've been lagging for a long time. They have to come on stream because gas has to move to the northern part. They have to move to the crevices, not just us in Lagos who are blessed and lucky.
Are there legal barriers? I mean, you work for a law firm. Are there legal frameworks or regulatory frameworks that inhibits or hampers the way energy transition needs to happen in Nigeria, in Africa? Because the truth of the matter is, look, many people don't even know that it is a problem. So imagine you see somebody who is infringing on it and then you go sue the person. The person says, I don't even know. I mean, how are there laws, or because you did mention that there are so many laws, right?
Yes.
We already have them, but are there the ones that currently don't make this transition easy or possible?
Yes. So I always say you may have the best solar or wind resources in your country, in Africa, but without laws, they are as good as not being useful to the last mile user. Okay. So there are laws for Nigeria, for example. We have the Electricity Act, which is very good. It has come on stream. It has made it mandatory for a certain percentage of power to be generated from renewable energy sources like biomass, like wind, like solar. And then it's trying to make it cost reflective, which also goes back to the issue of affordability. Then we also have the Petroleum Industry Act, of course. It was on stream for over 20 years, but thank God it was finally passed, which is really good for investors. Let's just hope it's not changed. So first of all, to answer your question, I would say predictability in our laws, which is really, really important. Investors want to know that their investments are bankable. And legal predictability has a lot to do with if an investment is bankable or not. Right? So I was at an event, I think a month ago, and I spoke about an asset which went viral when it happened, OPL 245, how that asset was revoked, how that asset was seized by the then minister, right, for petroleum without following the due process. And those assets were partly owned by independents, that's indigenous companies, majorly owned by the international oil companies, like the oil majors. Now, if your asset is just revoked after you have spent a lot of investment on developing such assets to whatever level, to production, right? You will not say those assets are bankable, and it's a deterrent for investors. So another thing that also hinders a legal barrier for new entrants. Let's go to the basics now. New entrants, like a company who owns a mini grid, right? For example, you're a mini grid operator or an LNG field operator. And then, first of all, what do you start with when you want to even start developing, or when you apply for a license? You need land. How are land access rights? For a developer, the land access rights, sometimes they are there. Like I said, the laws are good on paper, but we've had so many developers, even some of our clients who are mini grid operators, right, in the power sector. We've had them complain about, it was very difficult to secure land. Something as basic as land. Why is the governor of states, I'm not just narrowing down to Nigeria, we're talking about Africa now. Why is the governor of states not ensuring that these lands are made easily available for such
projects,
for such priority projects? It's going to help the communities. It's going to help. It's just little trickles of water. It's going to help the community. It's going to help Nigeria. It's going to help the African region, right? So land rights, for example, you want 50 hectares of land to develop maybe a mini grid project, or you got an asset and you need that land. You need right of way. You need to be granted that land. Sometimes it's even difficult to access those lands. They are given, and after a while, they're revoked. So the land rights are not even the land access rights are not even predictable, because you have land tenure disputes. Sometimes for communities like Kaduna, in Kaduna State and some of these northern states, you have land rights, land tenure disputes that span for a long period of time. There's also the issue of balance sheets. Weak balance sheets. Now, when we talk about gas offtake agreements, we have gas to power, right? A lot of our power plants are powered by gas plants, by gas explored from the ground, by generating companies and all that. So a lot of times, the balance sheets are weak. What do I mean by the balance sheets are weak? Generating companies, independent power producers, these are people who produce the power, who explore the power and want to, transmit it to the distribution companies, discos. Then you have the government as the embed, who is like the middleman. The government doesn't pay when they're supposed to pay. They're supposed to be the aggregators. We also have gas aggregators, right? They're supposed to be the aggregators. And then this affects the offtake agreements. When you don't have strong power purchase agreements, for example, that are bankable, financiers will not look your way. Even if they finance the project, they will make it very expensive. It will come at a very expensive cost. There's also cost of financing, right? And there are also some other legal issues like mismatch of local content. Our local content laws are very wonderful. We have the Nigerian Local Content Act, right? It's very wonderful. It's good. They are trying to encourage, what does local content mean? Encouraging indigenous companies, encouraging the indigenes to learn from the international oil majors, right? There should be like technology transfer, capacity transfer, and all that. But where you have a situation where you have to maybe an FPSO. An FPSO is a floating production storage operation, like offloading. It requires high technical expertise. You want to build an FPSO in Nigeria for operators of oil and gas fields. And then the act says, or the law says, you need 40% of Nigerian expertise. You need 40% of Nigerian equipment sourced from Nigeria. Your valve, your compressor, your subsea equipment.
Get them from Nigeria.
We're trying to build our local content, which is a good thing. But have you fixed those issues? What if a Nigerian company can't supply a viable spec?
Because that is what you're saying now is it's actually leading to my next question. When the federal government says by 2026, individual states should start generating their own power. Nobody should depend on the national grid anymore. So before you just go for that, do you think this is actually achievable by next year? Because I think it's by next year that they're proposing. So do you see Delta State? Do you see Kaduna? Do you see Zamfara? Do you see Sokoto and Jigawa State? Do you see them being able to generate their own power? So even power their own state first before thinking of maybe
getting off
sending excess to the grid.
You understand? Yes. Do you see that happening?
Well, I think the reason why the national or the federal government will do that is because they are trying to strengthen the grid. But I would say there are other ways to go about it. Why don't you maintain the grid? Why don't you maintain the wires, the transmission lines, and the grid, instead of asking people to go off the grid? The problem is now you have to strengthen the grid. I don't see how feasible it is. But there are some states who are very much ahead, like Lagos is the center of excellence. It's a commercial city. So you can't even expect Lagos. You can't expect anything less from Lagos. The reason why I say that may not be feasible is because there are still some states who do not have their own electricity laws and markets. So, the Electricity Act empowers states now. It has decentralized power production, distribution, the full value chain. States can do it. And how do states do that? They need a legal framework. The legal framework is the laws. And some states still do not have the laws. They do not have the markets. They do not have their regulator, their state regulator. So how do you want that to, play out next year? It's just so much pressure and tension.
I'm coming from the angle of I know you were at the Energy Week, and
Yes.
I'm so sorry. You have to share some of the,
Insights, right?
apart from the insights, what lessons did you get from there that we can use? Because I know it's an African conversation, but we
Yes.
were not there. So you have to tell us some of these lessons that we need to expand from this our conversation.
Yes, the African Energy Week, like I said, I like the philosophy behind it. It's more or less use African resources for Africa, right? It's okay. So in earlier years, I think this is their 5th year now on, and in earlier years, it used to be strictly, oh, let's just do hydrocarbons for powering African cities. But now they're coming to terms with the fact that decarbonization is here to stay. Climate goals are here, so we still have to look at renewables. So there was a little of talk around the renewables at the event at the African Energy Week as well. So basically, we talked about the main things that are affecting Africa, which is energy security. What is the foundation of energy security? I've talked about the indices, right? The elements. What is the foundation to ensure that those elements are available? Regulatory, finance. Africa needs a lot of finance on a large scale to scale. So there were a lot of talks around financing, and there were a lot of talks as well around ensuring that the permitting, the approval processes are easier. So we see, I wrote something on LinkedIn yesterday, and I was asking, it was like a poser, it was just my own reflection, because Nigeria is preparing for its 2025 licensing round, where it calls on oil and gas, production companies to bid, exploration production companies to bid for assets that's the oil and gas fields, right? Acreages. We are rich in oil and gas. Nigeria has like over 209 TCF of reserved gas, like the one that has been proven, and there's still unproven gas assets as well. And gas is very important in this transition journey. But is it about having the rich resources, or it's about developing them, about making sure these assets are easy to develop? Where am I driving at? There are some countries in Africa who have less, like Namibia. I use Namibia a lot because I had a lot of conversations with a lot of my African brothers and sisters from Namibia, even Mozambique, even Angola. They do not have up to 3/4 of what we have, but they are doing so well. They're doing so well. I mean, I had a conversation with the former director of the Ministry of Infrastructure and Mines in Namibia, and he told me something that when the new government came on stream, the new minister of that ministry came on stream, even the new president, he attributed to the fact that they're all females, that females make things work faster.
I think I love the statement.
Right?
We should promote it.
I mean, what did they spot? What did they see? How did they do it?
Okay, they saw that there was a lot of wastage in the whole system. So much proliferation of ministries. So they collapsed ministries. He said the Ministry of Infrastructure was separate from the Ministry of Mines and Energy, and those ministries were collapsed. So where you used to have maybe 100 ministries, they were collapsed up to 40 ministries to reduce wastage, to reduce bureaucracy in permitting processes. And the ministry is really investor friendly. When you come, there are laws, like I said. There are guidelines. Our bids are going off now. There are guidelines. There are regulations for, if you want to bid, this is what you should do. Have your request for proposal and all that. We look at it. The regulators look at it. And when we see that it's viable, or you have the technical capacity, if you're acceptable to the government, you have the technical capacity, you have the financial capacity, you show that through your letters of credit and all that, your bank guarantees, we're going to give you these assets. Why isn't it as straightforward as that? You see that these bidders, they actually provide proof of ability to develop these assets. But the permitting process takes up to 2 years. Why? It's not necessary. But Namibia made some new discoveries recently, right? And you see that a lot of the IOCs actually running from Nigeria deep waters. Many of the IOCs are leaving Nigeria deep waters for security reasons, commercial reasons, and they're moving to Namibia.
So what stops other countries from following suit? If Namibia can do it, just as you rightly said, some of these countries don't have as much as Nigeria South Africa, Ghana, and
yes.
So what do you think
that scaling?
Yes, what do you think that other African leaders need to do to scale up their own energy?
Yeah, so I'll still go back to making sure the laws are implemented, ensuring that you're friendly to your investors. So investors shouldn't be unsure, right? So when you have like a power purchase agreement, those agreements should be bankable. You should have some. Okay, let me even go here now. Apart from the bidding process, which I say make fast, ensure that it goes fast. When your bidders or when the companies show, when the investors show that they have the capacity, the parameters are already there in the law. Once they meet these parameters, what stops the NUPRC from recommending them to the minister? What stops the minister from approving within the timeline? Although the PI is going to do a lot of work in that regard, there's not what we call the deemed approval. Deemed approval means, if there's 60-day timeline to approve, for example, to approve a bid for maybe a production, a PPL or an OML or a PML, as the case may be now. You have 60 days for the minister to consider it. It has 60 days to move back to the NUPRC to be approved, right? So after that 60 days, it should be deemed approved if you don't get any response. So either they approve it, they send you a response that your bid has been approved or your application has been approved, or they send you that it has been declined, and they give you reasons why it was declined. And then if you don't get those responses, after 60 days, it should be deemed
approved.
But then, is it that easy?
Because I mean, I should just now go ahead and go and invest and then tomorrow you say I never approved this. I will have another.
I wish it could be as straightforward as that.
It is. Yes.
So another thing that the regulators could do as well, which is already coming on stream, but I think I want that to be more proliferated, is model contracts, model agreements. We already have model petroleum development contracts, like the joint operating agreements, like the joint venture agreements, JVAs. But we need to see more model agreements like the power purchase agreements, like LNG offtake agreements. Agreements like that should be model, when I say model, I mean a template where the clauses that would make an investor uncertain should be there, like change in law clauses, so that there's certainty, there's discipline. We could have clauses like financial clauses, right? You tighten your financial funding arrangement. Letters of credit have to be available. Those kind of clauses. You have timeline clauses that have to do with timeline. If you don't develop within this time, just like you have other clauses like abandonment, decommissioning clause, your maybe upcome clauses. There should be clauses like that. That quickens negotiation.
Wow.
Right?
Yes.
So I mean, I do see that governments seem to have, put in place laws and made these things look easy on paper. But how can private sector players and communities help to ensure energy security or transitioning? How can we play our own part?
Yes, the private sector, I always say, they're a very important sector of any economy, because they bring speed, they bring innovation, they bring commercial acumen, right, to the field, while the government, they ensure they guide through the laws.
Yes.
So the private players, what can they do? Private players, I will always say, are very important. They are the manufacturers. They are the mini grid operators. They are the ones that have the assemblage. They can have manufacturing hubs where there are assemblies of these inverters, these battery storages.
The employers of the labor, essentially.
Exactly. Establish data centers. These are all things that can actually help the transition. Data centers, mini grids, and then when it comes to operating in communities where they operate, they can make use of community development agreements, CDAs, which are already contractually or they're already regulatory obligations, CDAs, right? So they could use that to their own benefit, to their advantage. When I say CDAs, that has to do with community. So I always say CSR, community social responsibilities for operators. We always tell our clients this. It's no longer a nice to have, it's a must have. And when I say it's a must have, I see it in terms of partnering with these communities. Communities should not be an afterthought. Oh, we just got here, we saw that they're there, we need to do it. Embed it in your financial models. Embed it in your business planning. If you're planning for the next year, embed it in your business planning, because these communities are no longer just CSR. They are architects of energy security. They are actually the cheapest form of insurance. Insurance against vandalism, insurance against slow processing, getting your land access rights, insurance against destabilizing your operations, right? They are business insurances. So communities have a large role to play. So you could use CDAs, you could tie CDAs to job creation. CDA ensures that you have the needs assessment. You go and check the needs assessment of those communities. So tie it to job creation. You can even share revenue collection from the mini-grids with the communities. When you do that, they make your way easy, because if they don't do that, that will be self-sabotage. And nobody wants to sabotage his own self. So, yes.
Energy security has a whole lot, I believe, to do with our economy.
Of course.
How do you explain that? How can energy security boost the African economy? Because, like you started with, if there is no power, like what is happening in Nigeria now, most companies tend to leave.
Yes.
So how do we retain these investors, the multinationals? How do we keep them here and even assure them that there is energy security? I don't know how we're going to convince them, but yes, how can that boost the African economy from the level it is now?
Yes. Many African economies, they rely heavily on revenue from the petroleum sector, right? They rely heavily on the hydrocarbon sector. That's why I said transition for Africa doesn't mean abandoning hydrocarbons. It means they can coexist. But how do they coexist? They have to be, these assets or these gas plants, equipment have to be managed responsibly, right? So how does it affect our economy? We go back again. Nigeria's GDP is made mostly of revenue from
sale of crude.
Sale of crude. So if we don't meet our production quota, OPEC gives us production quota every year. Right? So it's just a revolving door. If you do not have power, you have to rely on generating sets. That is also a leak from your pocket.
Exactly.
And that causes emissions.
Yes.
Exactly.
That
so it's like a triple tragedy at this point.
Triple tragedy. So that's why I always say that I know we're going to come to that board for consumer behavior. If you have the lights, for example, you're in Band A, which is working really well in Lagos right now, or Band B, and you have the lights, pay for it. I know it can be expensive. Power isn't cheap, because the investment that goes into the generating set or these utilities, they aren't cheap. But if you have the power, pay for it, because it saves you a lot.
A whole lot.
Power, I mean, I remember when, during my school days, even in law school, when I was in law school, there was an outage that lasted for up to 4 days. And even to come to class was a problem.
Okay.
You can't move without energy. Energy is transportation. Energy is cooking. Energy is industrialization. Okay, energy is infrastructure. Now we're talking about gas infrastructure. We're talking about midstream. Okay, so this 2025 licensing round, it has a focus on midstream facilities are now going to be developed. When I say midstream facilities, I mean refineries. We are seeing what Dangote is doing with the refinery. It's doing so well. At least we don't have to depend on imports so much on imports as before, right? We now have our fuel refined. Now everyone is seeing how well it's working for the economy. At least we've not had issues of fuel scarcity for a while. It's expensive, but it's not scarce, right? So imagine more refineries come on stream. But for those refineries to be built, you need power.
You need land. You need
land.
So it's multifaceted. I do agree. So it kind of like just throws you into the next question I was going to ask you. I'm sorry, because your answers will always leapfrog into the next question. What data do you think policymakers need to track or look at when they want to, understand what is going on to make better policies? What do they need to always look at? You did mention consumer behavior.
Yeah.
But what else? What else is there that they need to always pay attention to and track so that they can make better decisions?
Okay, so data is very important right now. Data is, they say gold, the new gold. data is very important. So the kind of data you can track for power, independent power producers, for utilities like GenCos and the DISCos, what we need to track is hourly overload.
Yeah.
What is the hourly overload? What are the collection rates? Because there are a lot of collection losses for the distribution companies. That's why some of them are not just financially viable. What is the collection rates? There are a lot of collection losses for LNG operators, for gas operators, for gas production producers, for midstream operators. What is the level of emissions? Still has to do with flare.
Yes.
What are the flare outputs? How are you managing flare? Because flare has a lot to do with emissions, which also contributes to creating carbons and
the climate and all that.
Yes, it has to do with the climate. And then another thing you have to track is collection. Like I said, revenue. How do you collect revenue? How leak detection from your equipment. Many of these equipments are old, they are outdated. So we have, although there are already policies around that, right? We have smart meters as well. We have policies and some regulations and orders made by NEC that have to do with distributing smart meters. And then for the petroleum sector, the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, NUPRC, and Nigerian Midstream Regulatory Authority, NMDPR, they've made regulations around metering, right? You have to get the right meters to know what you're producing, because that also has to do with, you asked, how is it affecting the economy? Fiscal means collection of taxes, right? If you don't know how much you're producing, or if your gas is leaking, you wouldn't know how much tax that goes to the government, and that affects government revenue. Not just the investors' revenue now, but government revenue. So it affects the investors, it affects government. So data is very important. Thank God we now have flare out equipment that track flare gas. We also have those regulations, flare out regulations, leak detection regulations, metering regulations, and smart meters proliferation regulations, right? We also have policies that help with that.
In fact, Amolo, we have to bring Sandra back to this show because the time is not enough for us to finish this conversation because our next guest has logged in already. So we have to go wrap up this segment so we can take the next guest.
Yes.
But 1 minute, what is your final word to the lawmakers, the private sectors, and everyone that has a role to play in ensuring, in implementing the laws that concerns energy and security in Africa?
Okay. So behavior moves with policy. They have to move side by side. So for behavior, I'll say that consumers have to ensure that they prioritize efficient energy efficiency. So use efficient bulbs, efficient generators, or efficient equipment like your refrigerators and all that. And then ensure you pay for power. It's not a social benefit. It's something you have to pay for. And then for government, I'll really advise that laws should be predictable, use standardized or model contracts, and then ensure that if tariffs have to be set regulatorily, right, you want to put a cap, regulators want to put a cap on tariff collection, then let it be commercially viable. Not a situation where a mini grid, let's say, it's 60 naira normally commercial viability now it costs 60 naira for 1 kilowatt hour of power, and then the government puts a cap of 40 naira. It's not viable to the utilities. Or for example, 1 MMBTU of gas costs $6, and then government puts a cap at $4. I know the government is trying to do that for political reasons, maybe social benefits, but it's not viable to the investors, and it is discouraging. Laws should be predictable, and they should be tariffs should be commercially viable, and then for users, pay for what you get.
Those of you that are doing boycotting, also the say go and pay for that. I think it's a very good message. People really need to understand the importance of paying for light. A very big thank you to you,
You're welcome,
for coming on to this show. We hope to bring you back, because there is more that people need to learn. So Sandra Osinachi Nwandem is a senior associate at Tokbe Adebayo LP. She's also a chief columnist at SON Energy Digest. Sandra's experience as a legal expert and columnist equips her to provide both strategic and technical perspective on how African countries can navigate energy transition without compromising energy security. She has said it all. She proved herself. So we're not camping, we're not lying. We just told you who she is. Yeah. And of course, she displayed it once more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amavi. Thank you, Emmanuel. It's been a pleasure.
I hope you pay for utility.
I mean, I pay because if I come back, if I talk about my own lights now, you say, I'm in Band-Aid. But it's okay. We have to pay. Because I remember when we're not having light, people were like, no, give us the light, we pay for it. Now the light is here. Yeah. People are saying, it's too expensive.
No, they have to pay. They have to pay.
But it's expensive to have light.
So that's where energy efficiency comes in. You have to manage your power.
Yes, you have to manage it.